And looks like we're live. That's great. Welcome into the stream. Welcome into the stream. I'm just pouring some coffee. Finally started a stream pretty early, but today there might be some interruptions. I've got some work going on right outside my apartment. Uh, Emergency plumbing work where they're going to be cutting up all the concrete right outside my front door. So that's going to be pretty terrible. I'm not looking forward to that. But today we're going to getting back into the deployment workflow. Yesterday we got this working. dev.zerve.app, the real deal, the real app is deployed to a real domain. It's not our final domain, but it's our dev domain. And this was a big accomplishment. It was really nice to get our app running on a real server. But where are we going from here? What's next? At the beginning of the stream yesterday, I started going down the path that would eventually confuse me. Specifically, I split my app up into two different apps. My server into two different servers. Let me show you. There's now Zebra server and Puppy server and the new one, Aardvark server. And they all have different purposes. They all are kind of meant to be maintained into the future, even though they have tons of shared components, mostly shared components between them. So Aardvark server, I want this to be basically running as root on my machine. And Zebra server on the dev machine, I want to be running like in the exact same way that it will be running in the production server. And then on the production server, it's only running the Zebra server. So what I did yesterday is I set up the Aardvark server as if it were the Zebra server, the production server, which is fine. It's useful for sort of seeing how things work. And we went through the entire process yesterday. This whole file is a bunch of notes that I followed on yesterday's stream on how to build and deploy the Zerve app on a fresh server. And it's a few things, but it's not too difficult. It took maybe like an hour. It takes an hour once you know what you're doing. But it's just kind of manually pasting in these steps and following these commands. So I'd like to do it differently. I'd like to have maybe one script that will just update the Aardvark app on the server. So I'm going to try that, but I don't actually want the Aardvark app to be running in the way that it's currently running. So I think that's the first thing I'll do is in addition to the current setup, which is the Aardvark app running on dev.zerve.app, I'm going to run Aardvark on a different place. And this place is where we're going to be putting the test version of the Zebra service. So it's a little confusing because for both Aardvark and Zebra, we need to run an instance of the front end, Zoo Web. The entire Next.js app is actually going to be identical for these two different services, Aardvark and Zebra. So Zebra is the thing that customers will wind up using, but this is Aardvark, so this is not the right thing. And it's because just yesterday, I split up the two different servers, the Zebra server and the Aardvark server. I hope that beeping is not super loud and obnoxious. There's this beeping that's outside. I don't know if it's related to the construction that's about to start raining down upon my life. Maybe it's just a trash truck, garbage truck. Public key here at my special location, or the private key, and this is the host name of the server. Okay, we're logged in as root now. And now the fun can really begin. Okay. So here, I'm just looking at some of the previous commands that I had written. So we're going to basically be running a new thing. We need to create some new service files, and we also need to create a build that will be used for us here. So we'll ls, and we can see the previous builds that we've created. We've created 2 builds, and we have our source repo. So all the builds are kind of labeled the same way, which is kind of an interesting question of whether or not I should be using a separate build process for these separate services, or if I should use one build process and then run them from separate services. For now, I will go ahead and have a separate build process for running for when aardvark service is updated, and the aardvark service will run as root. So let's create a new script here on the server side. Well, basically, we want to be creating a new script, but for now, we're going to do it all by hand, and we're just going to take notes into the script file, because that, I think, will just be an easier workflow than what I was about to do. Okay, so we can take a few notes. And a few things that we're going to set up manually by hand don't need to be part of the script. The script is just doing the things that are happening on a regular basis. So, for example, we want to do a fetch inside of the Git repo. So it would be like, the script would be cd into root zerve.git. I don't know if cd works inside of a bash script though. I think it should. I'm just going to assume that cd is going to happily work inside of a bash script. And then we want to do git fetch. So this will get all the latest code onto our Git repository onto our server from GitHub. And from there we can do however many builds we want on top of the code, because then all of the code will be updated. So let me just run that by hand. Cd into zerve.git, and then do git fetch. Okay, well maybe there wasn't anything to fetch. I'm just going to move on to the next step because I assume that worked. So now we like cd back into the root directory. Okay, so now we're in root, and now we want to do the actual build. So we start by copying everything over into the place where the build actually happens. And I have notes on how the build is done, and I'm going to copy from those notes right now. So that's what this is. That's this git clone. Here's build process start. We're in the middle of kind of following these documented steps for how to build, because I had figured this out several weeks ago and then decided not to keep a deployment running, mostly because it's such a painful process to update the deployment. So these scripts will come in very helpful. I'm going to rename this to aardvark build. I'm just going to rename it to aardvark build because I don't actually care about having previous builds of aardvark around. It's nice to have some robustness in the other workflow, but for the build itself, I don't see any reason to sort of leave that around. So I will remove the aardvark build directory before we even create it, because it could have been there from before. Or what I'll do is after the build is complete, we'll just delete it. So now we'll run this checkout command, and it'll copy everything from our local repo into a brand new directory. And then we cd into that new directory, and then we run yarn. And it says run yarn offline. But for some reason I found that running yarn offline takes just about the same amount of time as running yarn itself. So I don't think it actually matters. And then once the dependencies are installed, the next step of our build process here, according to this at least, is to delete the package cache and the .git repo so that the build is just lighter. But this is one of the slower parts of the build. We're waiting. We're waiting, we're waiting. And then the actual build steps are here itself. So here you can see we're only building the zoo web and the aardvark server. Now, depending on what build process we're in, we want to build different things. But for the aardvark server, that's going to be running as root, that we're working on setting up right now, we want to build the web front end, which is zoo web, and aardvark server, which is our specialty server that will be doing backend things for Zerve. And the idea between having both aardvark and Zebra, two different servers, aardvark is more likely to go down. Zebra is the thing that needs really good uptime, whereas aardvark is the internal one, which is like the canary in the coal mine. It's the thing that's most likely to die, because we know that mistakes will be made, but we don't want them to be made on the production service. And there's all sorts of other stuff we don't want on the production service that we do need our infrastructure to manage. So that's why the aardvark server is kind of here from a design perspective. Are we installed yet? Okay, so now we can go and run the build for the web app. This is going to take ages. It relies on Next and Webpack. And really, this is a great time to go take your morning poo, go for a walk. Basically anything, but be productive. We can be productive though, because we just need to edit this text file to look at our next steps here. Oh, and I didn't even run that cleanup step. The cleanup step where we're supposed to clean up these other things in the repo that aren't being used. It doesn't really matter. I can run this whenever. And then we're also going to build our server. And because we're producing an aardvark build, that's the only build we need to run, even though the other servers are really fast to build. So maybe we would consider a workflow where we use one big package, one big bundle that's built to deploy all of the different servers. But welcome to the stream. Just chilling today. Got an early stream going. This code, by the way, is all on GitHub, if you'd believe that. It's all open source, liberal open source. So you're free to copy and use this however you'd like. It's not some dirty copyleft software. Welcome viewers. I was just talking about how there's content on GitHub and on YouTube. YouTube has some slightly more polished content, slightly less up-to-date content, but I'll be making some more YouTube videos soon. And yeah, it's all open source, including these note files that I've made, like this setup.markdown file. Currently, that's the closest thing I've got to a self-hosting guide. So the repository, I don't know, somewhere in this file, in this repo is called setup.md. So yeah, this is the file that I've been reading from to do all this deployment junk. But I want to automate it. I shouldn't have to walk through this process, and neither should you. Are we done with our build? No. I expected far too much. Also, if you want to hang out anytime else, feel free to hop into the Discord. It's not very active, but I'm in there. I will hang out. I will happily talk about Zerve. It's basically my favorite thing to talk about. Okay, we've ran the next build. now we're on to running the server-side build, which is considerably faster because it uses ES-build and it's already done. Now we can jump out of this directory and we want to basically package it up. What we do in our official build process, by the way, we we basically copy it into a zip folder and then unzip it. We zip everything up so that way it's properly archived, and then we unzip it. But again, I kind of want an accelerated workflow here. It's slow enough with that next build. I'm not going to pack it into a zip file and unpack it. I'm just going to start using this new thing. And basically what that means is that we're going to assume during this deployment process that things will succeed. So what we can do is we can start by removing, basically we're going to remove the instance that already exists. There is no instance that exists right now. So it is going to be, the instance will be located in the root directory. So I'm just going to move the aardvark build into the place where the instance will be, but usually there would be a conflict at this time because there would already be an instance there. So not much of a problem, but let me just move it to, what's the instance called? Aardvark? Aardvark, let's just call it aardvark. Or aardvark instance, aardvark 01, I don't know. There's not going to be more than one aardvark. So we'll just call it aardvark for now. And now we're ready to basically write our system files and we can launch our services. So our system files, also because we're doing the deployment process as well, we are going to need to copy over the secrets file. I do believe. So this would look like this. It would look like copy, here, and let me just go and put this into our notes. So copy secrets into aardvark/secrets.json. So that way the aardvark application has access to its secrets, and we could have changed those secrets at that time as well. It's just out of convenience that we're using the same secrets variables in the different apps for now. So we've skipped down to this step, and now we need to create our service files. So we'll call it aardvark server and aardvark web. Aardvark server.service. I want this to match basically the Z server. So I'm just going to copy this. Oh, except I'm in visual edit mode, so like I can't even copy. I just want my cursor to allow me to copy. Like I'm in some newer version of VI that has working like cursor support, and it's really throwing me off. VI. How do you visually copy when you have the visual select? Because last time when I tried copy, it's like a Y for yank or something. Press V to begin character-based visual selection. But here's the thing, is I never pressed V. It just started doing character-based visual selection. It just switched into V for me when I start dragging. I don't want that. I just want to select the actual text on the screen, on the terminal. So this is a lovely little distraction, just getting lost in Vim copy-paste issues. Terminal, visual copy, or visual cursor. I don't know, because I don't even know how this got turned on. I think this actually updated, by the way, when my Mac OS updated. I wonder if there's just a feature I can turn off here. Well, what a distraction. So annoying. Okay, like I literally can't copy this. If I copy and then just go somewhere else, it won't. It has some previous stuff in my clipboard. Yeah, it doesn't copy. So, uh, this is how I used to copy and paste, but that's okay. I can also cat the same file, which is like a really dumb thing, but hey, it'll at least let me copy and paste. Jeez. See? Selecting. It lets me select and copy and paste. And we'll update this file. But we need to change some things around. So the working directory is in home/root. Oops. /aardvark. And then inside of here, it's probably inside of apps/aardvark server. That looks correct. Oh, and it's not home/root. It's just /root. Okay, this looks reasonable. So we're going to copy the same thing except for Zweb service, because we have two service files. And this part won't need to be automated because these service files we're just going to keep in place. Okay, just copy the one service file that we need. Okay, and now we're going to edit a new service file called aardvarkweb.service. Oh, I forgot to rename the name of these things. So, oopsies. Okay, so it's in root/aardvark. And it's just in there. I might have screwed up the other file, I think, but that's okay. Okay, this looks pretty correct. Oh, and then we just need to change the name and the description. Aardvark server. And the host is going to be, well, documentation doesn't really matter. I'm just going to leave this here. If documentation doesn't matter in the context of the service file. Okay, relax. I know people are going to get mad at me for saying documentation doesn't matter, and it really does. But sorry, not in that case. Okay, aardvark server.service. And we just want to change this. Aardvark server compared to aardvark web. Let's just change this to be web. Ah. All right. So now we can do system control. Hopefully some of the boring stuff will be behind us. Daemon reload. All right. So now we are running, these new service files have been loaded into the system, so we can do start now. Aardvark, actually I should be able to autocomplete them. Aardvark web. and aardvark server. So we're going to look at the logs. Okay, it looks like our web failed. I think I know what's the problem is. We forgot to change some things on our service files. So first I'll edit the server service file, and the user is wrong. Because it's trying to access files in our root directory, it's not allowed to. But root is allowed to. So we're going to run this server and the web app as root. Although web only needs to be root just so that it can read from the file system here. And this isn't our main production app. This is a specialty app that's running on our backend called the Aardvark service. Yes, yes, yes. Makes perfect sense. Now we can come in here and do system control daemon reload. And then restart both services. Okay, now what did the log say for the service? Well, will you give me the good news? Okay. Failed to start Aardvark Web. -- follow. Oh, you know, it's probably, yeah, here, it's complaining about it's unable to use these same ports. Again, I half-assed this new configuration file because I forgot to assign unique ports, and the other service is already running, so we need to go and kind of redo a few steps. Okay, so I'm going to say that the Aardvark ports are going to be running on different ports. 8990 and then 8999. All right, now we go and redo the same things here, which is to do system reload, restart the web service, and restart the server service. Now, if we go look at our logs, oh, it says it's correctly started on port 8990. So now we're ready to go into Caddy and reconfigure Caddy. So for this app, I don't really think we need to use the CDN. I don't think it'll provide that much value. Whereas the real Zerve application definitely needs the VPN, and even the dev instance of the Zerve application should have the VPN. Not the VPN, the CDN, which is also kind of also a network proxy of a sort, but very different. Okay, so let's edit that caddy file. And these steps over here are going to be a little bit different when we're actually in it, because the first thing we're going to want to do, assuming the server is already running, what we would do is we would stop the service and then we would start it back up. And we would use the same exact configuration, so we wouldn't need to do any daemon reload. Okay, so we'll stop both services, and it's called Aardvark Web and Aardvark Server. And then we would perform the move. And then we copy the secrets file. Oh, and actually, instead of move, you also need to move the existing Aardvark build into something called Aardvark Old, which we will delete at the end of the process once we've verified the service works. Okay, so we restart the service, and that should basically be the end of the process for updating Aardvark from the perspective of the server. But for now, in our initial setup, we need to edit the caddy file. So currently we've only set up dev.zerve.app. But our server already has the URL for, for aardvark.zerve.dev. So this URL points to the server, but it can't connect properly because Caddy is not really prepared to handle that host. So let's get Caddy prepared for it. We don't need to do this special block, by the way, because we're not being proxied through Cloudflare for this domain. But these other steps are basically the same because we're proxying to the app. Oh, again, copy and paste is being a problem for me. So isn't it funny that the tools that worked for so many years now are starting to fail me? And now here I am typing out a copy paste. It's highly embarrassing. Thanks for asking. Okay, so this is port 8999. Okay, not too slow. And this is, again, 8990 is the host of our web service, or the port of our web service. So this is looking good. Now we can do caddy reload. And we pass the config file. And that's just the file we just edited. Etsy caddy file. Did I do that properly? I guess so. It wasn't auto-completing for me, so I thought there was something wrong. But aside from configuration errors, Caddy is not complaining. Let's see if this works now. Fingers crossed. Okay, so this is now running a separate instance than we're running here on zerve.dev.app. What, you don't believe me? It's a separate instance? What if I shut one of them down? Maybe that would convince you. You're so hard to convince sometimes, random audience member. System control stop Zerve, what's it called? Server 01. So we're going to leave the web app running, but then over here, if we refresh, it can't load anymore because we've stopped the API. Meanwhile, on aardvark.zerve.dev, it stays up, right? Oh, busted. How did this stop? This is why I was trying to convince you, because sometimes I need to convince myself of my own sanity. Okay, so look, if I hit this API, it hits correctly. Oh, you know what it is? I blame whoever configured those files earlier. Can we do a blame to see whose fault it is? No, but it's a very simple fix. All we need to do is go, so we've kept this service stopped. That's fine. We need to go fix our web service, our new web service. So gonna edit the aardvark web service. And here, look, it's pointing to the wrong Z origin. Here, it should be pointing to aardvark.zerve.dev. And now it should be pointing to its own API server, because that was the problem. The new aardvark service was pointing to the API server for the other host. So now what I'll do is I will do daemon control reload. So we've loaded that new service file, and then we just need to restart that service. You restart aardvark web.service. Okay, now, hopefully we're talking to the correct host. Hello? Okay, refresh. Okay, now it's talking to the correct host. And if we look at the logs, or look at yeah, we know we have WebSocket troubles, but it should be able to hit the XHR it is. It's happily talking JSON, talking XML HTTP request, AJAX, as it were, to the web server. So our new deployment is working. Now let's write a script that makes it so that every time some code changes on the aardvark server, it'll actually get updated. And then we can try that out and just try running the script. And we want to get this new aardvark service changing. We need to make some progress. Aardvark is the name of my demo app. So I know, Shorty, welcome. So aardvark is the code name of the dev server. So it's a little bit confusing because I'm kind of building mostly from scratch on this project. But I've got like a few different servers that serve different purposes or will be serving different purposes. So the Zebra server is the main service that people will be using. But right now I'm working on deploying a similar server that I had cloned from the Zebra server to my dev service. And then my dev service will actually be managing the production service, hopefully. So that's kind of the plan, is to make it so that the aardvark server is the thing that fails first, and it is the thing that basically manages the production server and updates it. So maybe we'll want to revisit that in the future, but I'm working on this script, which should be a shell script that we should be able to run on the back end to test out updates. So let's see. How do we want the workflow for this shell script to work? That's a question, because I don't want this script to just be living on the server, because then if ever anything happens to the server, we lose the script. I want it to be checked into the repo. So that means, how do I run the script on the server side if the very first step needs to be updating? Well, what I can do perhaps on the server is I can have a single line that I basically copy and paste into the server, which is going to be like cd into the root zerve.git, and then git fetch, and then there's no actual instance of the thing. So we now, even though we've fetched the script, we're not actually using the script. So it's interesting. The first few steps of our process actually, I think, should not be scripted. Okay, I'm just gonna like write it all out in one long little script line that I can try copying and pasting, and maybe making a shell function for or something. I don't know. Bootstrapping stuff is hard. So what this script will do is it'll update the aardvark server, which is not the ultimate production server. This is the script that I'm going to run by hand to update the backend server. And this is the actual script here. Let me make it bigger for you. So first it's going to update the local repository, and this is a bare repository that doesn't actually have a working directory. But we need a working directory, so that's the first thing we do, or the next thing we do is we create a working directory for our build, and then to prepare our build, we go into it and we run yarn, and then we clean up some stuff. Then we run our two different builds for our two different services. This is the next app, and we run the build for the server. And then this probably we want to clean up. We want to delete the aardvark build at the very end of the process. Actually, we're deleting something called aardvark old. Anyways, I'm still working on the script, but basically it runs the build, and then it installs the build by stopping the previous service, moving the files around. So we're moving the old aardvark service away, and then we're moving our new build into the aardvark service location, and we're copying over the secrets file that it's going to need in order to run, and then we run it. So these steps should be pretty fast because the build has already been completed, and then we're running the new aardvark service at that point. So I'll check most of this code into the repo. Let's see if we have like a scripts section or something. I don't know where this would, oh, we have a config folder. I'll just create a new file in here called update archive, update aardvark. Oh, and I called it dart.md out of habit, but it's a .sh. It's a shell file. It's a shell script. And then I'm supposed to put a header here, like shebang, like hash bang, and then like bin bash or something. Bin sh. Is it shebang? That looks correct. Hashtag bang bin bash or bin shell. And then this last step I'm going to comment out because, well, just in case that old build is still relevant, I want to keep it. And the other thing is, inside of the Git repo, I want to mark this as an executable file. And the tricky part is the first few things have to be done before the script will even be available. Do I have a fixed bash version that all users will have, or just rely on the user's system version? Good question. It's a simplified setup. This is, we're actually currently just logged in as root. So which sh, user bin sh. But you're right that user bin env bash is the official. I always forget the header, so I appreciate you here. This is kind of asking the system to find its own bash, right? But the problem is these steps can't have to be kind of done ahead of time. So I would put this in a comment maybe at the top of this file, because you look at this file and then you're like, oh, this is the command that you use to run it. So cloning into the aardvark build and then cd into it and then run this command. It's a little meta. We're running the script here, which is inside of config / update aardvark.sh. And yeah, so these first few steps will be the thing that you kind of have to run manually. Even though it feels pretty excessive, it feels like way too many steps to have to do manually. But let me just try this out. And then, of course, because we're inside of Git, we need to add the flag, the chmod command. So at chmod, so what I usually do is, and I don't know if this is perfect, I do users and groups plus X, because I want basically people who are users and groups who have access to this, but not everybody, to be able to execute it. And this is usually enough for Git to pick this up as an executable file, which is just like a single flag inside of Git. And it's the script called aardvark. Am I in the right place? Oh, it's called update aardvark. Okay, so now I could run update aardvark here on my Mac, but all sorts of shit's failing. I'm not actually going to follow through with that because that doesn't make any sense. But now maybe we can try pushing the stuff to Git. I'm not expecting this to work on the first try, but I'm expecting to learn something. So what were those steps that we need to run on the server? And I'm just going to try kind of copying and pasting them all in at once, just to see what happens. I mean, I could also maybe format them on a single line, but never mind. Because the idea here is this, because we've pushed to GitHub, the very first few steps here should be getting from GitHub. Updating files. I don't know why it's gotten a few files. Oh, okay, good. It's complaining. So we've learned something. We've learned something. Aardvark build already exists and it's not an empty directory. Well, that's actually my own fault because I didn't clean up last time. Should have cleaned up after myself. arm-rf aardvark. Oh, here, let me cd into my root directory. So there's aardvark, and then there's aardvark build, which I guess I thought I had moved aardvark build before. Let me just, by the way, see what's in there. Everything, I guess. So I don't understand, because I thought I had done a move command before, but never mind. Whatever it is, I'm going to need to learn again. That's why we're using scripts here, is because it's a little bit more repeatable, and it's a little safer to go and like blast things away and repeat them. Okay, so we're in kind of a clean state now. I'm actually just going to copy and paste all of these commands again, even though we've already done the fetch. It shouldn't be necessary to fetch again. Okay, something interesting is happening now. It's actually not that interesting. What's happening is it's working. I think that's what's happening, is that these commands are being run as part of the script, but then it's also being run by me. And so it's trying to basically do this git clone step twice. I think. Pretty sure that's what's happening. So I'd like to have, I don't know if bash supports multi-line comments, but I'd really like a multi-line comment here so that this can be copied and pasted. But in lieu of that, what I'll do is I'll say aardvark.md, and then these won't be, oops, come on. To update aardvark, I'm going to take a few notes for myself here. And what's it look like, by the way, to log into the server for me? I forget. I'm going to copy this command, because this will come in handy. This is just the shell command to log into my server. Okay, these are some terse notes. Okay, steps to run this script. Because you always want to run the latest version of the script. Minor aardvark. So we push the changes to the server, and then we run these commands again. But we do need to make sure that we've cleaned up. Okay, we've cleaned up the build, and now I'm just going to paste those like 5 commands. And the first thing it does is it gets that new code from GitHub, and now it's actually running the build. We're already into the yarn step, so it got past that problem that we were having earlier. So what we're currently on is this step. So yeah, it's a kind of manual process. It's not entirely automated, sadly. We could make it so that one script is permanently on the repo, and all that script does is those 5 lines. So that way, when I log into the server, it's just a one-line command. Multi-line comments in bash, much appreciated. Ino? Am I saying your name correctly? I'm going to try to use that pattern over here. Fortunately, I'm in VS Code and not Vim, so I'm allowed to have copy-paste work. I'm just bitter about that, actually. Okay, this doesn't look like it doesn't look like it's validated as a multi-line comment, I'm afraid. Oh wait, I think I copied it from the, so typical of me. On Stack Overflow, I copied it from the question section rather than the answer. Isn't that funny? That's not smart. Anyways, how's our build doing? It's Doing great. We've moved on to the next JS part of our build. It's like the next course in a very complicated meal. And I won't actually notice if the code has changed, because the code is like exactly the same. So once this is working a little bit better, we can do a test workflow. Maybe we can even make it so that the deployment is a single line that I run on my computer. And this isn't the deployment that will ultimately be automated, but this is going to be the server that's doing the automated deployments. So that goes to show how far we really have to go. Well, the build process is now kind of doing its own thing. So yeah, next time the build process comes will be a great time for a break. And who knows, the stream might also end somewhat abruptly, because I've been told very loud things are going to be happening right outside the front door of my apartment. And they told me it would start at 9 in the morning on Tuesday, May 24th. That was 4 minutes ago. So hopefully we don't hear a big concrete saw spin up in the background. Because if they make too much noise, I'm gonna leave. I will not be here. Okay, we're almost done running our patience simulator. Okay, look at this. It says cannot stat aardvark and aardvark build. So maybe it's having troubles running the CD. I wonder if it's having troubles, or maybe my script is nonsense. That's likely as well. Let's, by the way, see what it has done, if it's moved anything. Well, it hasn't. So a script actually doesn't really have the ability to CD, does it? Or it has. I get sometimes confused, because CD is a weird thing, because it kind of changes the environment in weird ways. It's not just changing the PWD variable inside of the path for some reason. It can't always be run inside of scripts, and I don't always know why. LS, okay. So we have aardvark and aardvark build, but there's no aardvark build old. So my assumption is that aardvark build was successful. Oh, you know what? This might be an easy bug. It doesn't look like I CD'd back into the root directory. So whenever I'm doing anything that's specific about the path, I need to CD into the directory where I expect to be. And we've commented out the deletion step. And also, at the end of the script, what I'll do, just for the sake of it, is I'll put 2 status statements in. That way we can check the status of our services, and at the very end we'll see, hopefully, some green lights to indicate the service is working. And screw it, I'll be ambitious and delete the old thing, because that way we can run this script repeatedly without having to clean up after ourselves. And screw it, let's go ahead and copy this into a script on the server. And I'm not worried about it being kind of special state on the server, because it's pretty easy to recreate this script by just copying what I'm doing here. Aardvark update.sh. And these are the steps. And then at the top, we will input hash bang or bang hash user bin env bash. Okay, and then we need to chmod this thing. Users and groups can execute aardvark update.sh. So now, server side, we should be able to run aardvark update, and then eventually we can run this on our own laptop through shell. Oops, this is why I need a moderator. I don't know how to mod even. I'm like so bad at this. Okay, I think I fixed the problem. Okay, so we've added script permissions for aardvark update. So now we should be able to run aardvark update.shell. I don't know. What happens? Wait, hang on. Let's push our code first. Yeah, we have, did we change anything important here? Not really, but minor aardvark 2. Okay, so now we run aardvark update, the script on the server. The first thing it does is it pulls the repo, and then it clones the repo and runs the rest of the build script from that repo. So most of the build process is defined in the repo, but the very first step is not, because it can't really be. Okay, we had similar issues that we had on the previous run. I will run a status. Oh, here, let me show you. I'll just run both of these status lines right now. Okay. It says that both servers are running. Also, I'll do ls. So again, there's aardvark and there's aardvark build. And the script was complaining about what exactly? It says it successfully built the ES build, and then the next thing it does is it tries to stat aardvark. But there's no such file or directory. But we're supposed to cd into root first, and then do the move. Okay, I'll tell you what, because, like, just out of, like, I'm slightly concerned, actually, the script is not getting updated. But hey, assuming that the script is getting updated, we might as well use a bunch of absolute paths, because then we won't have this problem. Right? Okay, and then same here. This can be root aardvark old. No more problems, right? So I'll commit this code, and then I'll run the sort of entry point script on the server again and hope that it actually is going to see these changes. And what I'll do is I will put in a log statement or an echo, like, just because I want to see if this is working or not. So we'll put in update aardvark. Gotta format it properly, you know? Okay. So let's see if this code changes. Does new script run? If so, we won't have any more problems because, like, it's working. But there's a chance that this new script does not actually run when I run my little aardvark update. And we will know right quick. Look, we just saw the issue. We should have seen. We got into the yarn step, which is down here, But we did not start running our new code because it would have echoed. It would have told us. Haha. So now we need to debug our outer script. Aardvark update.sh. So something's wrong here. Maybe the problem is that the build directory already exists. So I'm going to do the most aggressive thing possible, which is rm-rf the build directory if it's already here. Because I want this script to like aggressively work. Is that fair? And it takes a little bit longer for that step. Okay, good. So there's the evidence that we needed that we are actually running our new script. So fingers crossed that we update Aardvark. And then maybe I'll show you how I can run it from my machine. I'll be calling into the script via SSH rather than having to log into the server via SSH. It should be a slightly faster way for me to be able to get this deployment to happen. And this is the deployment that is happening totally manually. And then we can move on to some automated deployment stuff. Might be fun. Okay, we're waiting on next. This is going to be another 2 minutes, so I'm just going to be back shortly when this finishes. Okay, this is looking good. So now what I'll do is I'll just double check that the service works on Chrome. aardvark.zerve.dev. By the way, this service is down, by the way. Very down. How down? Interesting how there's intermittent server-side errors. Because I'm not expecting the server-side error. Bad gateway. That's interesting. I just like aggressively refresh. Sometimes it hits the server, no fine. It hits the next app, no fine. And sometimes it's just hitting 502 on the API. The API, I'm expecting it to fail. But let's bring the API back online. Zerve service. Now, if we restart this, are we still getting those intermittent 502 errors? Nope. Okay. So this is a separate service than Aardvark. Why does it say Z connection API? I don't like that, how it just says that at the root. But that's also not incorrect. It's just really kind of a junky thing. This is the default on web for root, it seems. Whatever. Okay, so I want to prove that Aardvark server is different, by the way. Oh, and I can close this because I've created that special file, that script file. So here we're going to have special capabilities. Like, for example, we don't need to have anything like store state on Aardvark server. And also, we're going to delete the concept of the user's store. So that's why there's this like get user store thing. That's going to be something that the other app will have, that this app won't. The Zebra app will have that, but Aardvark won't, because Aardvark is our internal application. So I'm going to get rid of this concept of get user store. And we can clean up some stuff. So all we should be able to do basically is log in on this service. And we might even want to prevent other people other than me from logging in. And what if we also want to disable the email or the SMS-based authentication? We just want email auth. So I've just disabled SMS authentication just by commenting out this authentication strategy. Okay. And also, just for fun, I'll drop in something called a Z static. So just say info, Z static, create Z static. We should be able to auto import this eventually. When auto import wakes up. And we're just going to say aardvark. We can put anything inside of a Z static. Okay, I'm kind of hoping this is a functioning server. What if we hit it locally? Can we hit it locally? Do we know the right host? Yeah, we do know the right host. We're hitting it. So if we hit /info, it'll just give us the info that we had put statically, which is aardvark. Okay, so now let's just say push some changes. Aardvark test changes. Yeah, we'll go ahead and directly commit and we'll push. Now I want to run this script on the server that we had ran a minute ago. What's the script called? It's just called aardvark update.sh inside of root. So now I want to run this from my client, from my laptop. So this is the shell command that I use to connect to the server. And I think with shell commands I can specify what, like a -t, or even specify just like what I'm running on the server. But there are slightly different behaviors because I'm actually trying to run a shell script. But I'll just try the simple thing, which is to type right now root slash aardvark update, which is the absolute path of the shell script that I want to run. Okay, we're going to see, oh, okay, it looks like it's running the shell script correctly. So here I am basically from my laptop telling the server to deploy itself. The first thing it does is it updates the repo, and then it starts using the deploy script from that new repo. And hopefully by the time this script is done, I know it's going to take a minute, but hopefully by the time the script is done, this will update with new behavior. aardvark.zerve.dev will update with new behavior. So in the meantime, I know it's going to take a minute, so I'm going to take another break, slightly longer break. I'll see you soon. This is not what it looks like when good things happen. These are active, running, but where's the green flag? Isn't there usually a green flag telling me that things are good? Oh wait, but it is running the new service like totally correctly, so maybe it is fine. I tap on info and it gives me the aardvark string. Cool. So now I can change code and in a single command from my server, get that new code running on the back end. But really it'd be nice if the back end could be used to deploy itself, because when code changes, I don't want my laptop to be involved getting new code out to production. So ideally, aardvark helps with that workflow and helps me actually deploy this. Interesting also that the WebSocket connection is failing here. And what that tells me is that, because previously when I put the other server on production, dev.zerve.app, is this running by the way? Yeah, this is running fine. Dev.zerve.app goes through Caddy, the server on my virtual private server. It's the HTTP server. And also it goes through DigitalOcean. So I wasn't sure which one of those was preventing WebSockets from working. But apparently it's Caddy, because on aardvark, WebSockets are also broken, but it doesn't go through DigitalOcean CDN. We're still using DigitalOcean as the DNS server. But it should be going straight from my server to my laptop, and it still isn't working. So that means it's probably the Caddy server that's preventing WebSockets from working. Maybe that's an easy fix. I'm not going to bother fixing it right now, though. So wouldn't it be great if the aardvark server could like create and maintain another server? Now that we have a root server that's like a different server from our main sort of production server. So now that like aardvark is easy to deploy, let's make it so that aardvark can deploy the other server, which is called Zebra. So maybe first let's make it so that aardvark deploys Zebra on itself. I think that would be nice, because then we can set up a webhook so that aardvark does that whenever the code changes on GitHub. But the quick moving part of the stream is now over, because now we've got this cool script, and now we're like left in design phase again, trying to figure out how to make it so that once somebody logs into aardvark, because we don't want just anyone to be able to make changes. Right now anyone can log into aardvark, but we can fix that. We can make it, and right now it has several authentication mechanisms, but phone is not actually here. Phone would fail because we've disabled it. So maybe we can make it so that only one user is allowed to log into aardvark. So when we do create email auth strategy, we don't provide any options to it, but we could. So we could provide an optional thing called options. Email options, auth options. So then we would create this type. So I would say that if the email allow list is present, then it's a string of allowed emails. Sorry, it's a list of strings for the allowed emails. Otherwise, any email is allowed. And then on generic message auth strategy, we need to add some sort of validator function here, where we can check to see if the input email is allowed. auth message strategy config. Also funny that I'm using a partial here. It's kind of silly. But we could potentially add it to here. We could say, as part of the strategy config, you can specify validate address. But then the address type itself is generic, which is a little confusing. So the validator is a function that takes in the address and it returns a Boolean. I think I have some sort of error on this file. Otherwise, wouldn't it be auto-formatting for me? Is this signature not good? We're saying that the address returns a Boolean. Am I not allowed to use generics like this? I think maybe I'm doing some weird stuff with generics that it's not liking. I think this whole generic object thing is something in my imagination. And I wonder if this type is used by anyone else. It's not. It's only used here. So as a result, I'm just going to say that we're going to inline this config type out of my own convenience and lack of understanding. Okay, have I fixed the errors? Okay, at least prettier is kicking back in. So validate address is something I can put on the third argument here. And it goes from an address to a Boolean. So if options .email allow list, then we have special behavior and we're only going to return true. We're basically going to return whether or not there is an email or address is allowed. If it's in the allow list. So we can do find index options.email allow list. Here, what we'll do is we'll destructure it. Oh, except options itself might be missing. So okay, so there's going to be the index email allow list.find index of the email. So return true if this is basically const is found in allow list. If it's not equal to -1, if the index that we find is not equal to -1. Okay, then we also want to have configuration for allow listed domains in addition to allow listed emails. And I think that's actually what I want. We can try both workflows here, because I do think these are pretty powerful features. So if we're allowing from a domain list, it's slightly harder to check to see if they're valid because we need to iterate over each domain and see if the email matches that domain. Or we could, in theory, we could extract the domain out of the email. Okay, let's do it that way. So if there's a domain allow list, we need to find the email domain. So the email domain is basically you can take the email and you can do a .match on it. And then you're providing a regex. And the regex is like something something at domain. And then it ends. So the $sign is at the end, and then I think at is a literal here. And then we need to capture the domain, so .star. I don't know, is at a literal in regex? We're going to give this a try. We're going to run this whole thing locally, and we'll see what we come up with. I think this is going to be a match, like an array, but we want to make sure that this regex is actually working. So we need to test this by setting domain allow list. We'll set it here on the aardvark server instead of email. And the only domain that I want to allow is zerve.app. And we'll see if this works. So we need to test locally. And it looks like we are running the correct server and everything locally. So I'll hit auth, hit email, and type an invalid domain. See what happens. Okay, we didn't get any log statement at all, which means we're either not running the correct code or more likely we're not activating the correct code path. Validate address, I don't think this is actually ever used. That's our issue. We got halfway through installing this address validation workflow. So the very first thing we're doing while authorizing is we're validating this address. And we're going to throw a new error. The error should be much better than this, by the way, but it's okay for now. Eric at foobar.app. Validate address is not defined. Okay, well. Right, because it's called something else. It's called config input. So what I'll do is I'll say okay, so wrote a little bit of code that basically only runs the validator if we have it. So now we're going to try again. Email address, eric at foobarapp.com. Email allow list is not defined. We just keep on running into our own issues, don't we? Right, because we've basically, this is just a typo from when we were copying and pasting our bugs. Wait, in fact, did we reach this log statement? Email allow list is not defined. These are the email auth options, so it's going to be options dot etc. Options dot email allow list. So this, I mean, this won't work, but I did expect the log statement to come out here. Oops, hello. I missed the button and pressed cancel instead. Here we go. Okay, now it's just saying it doesn't look like an email. hello@foobar.com. Now send me an email. And we get the same issue. Email allow list is not defined inside of validate address. Oh, I have a small typo. It's literally a lowercase l that caused that issue here. Okay, now we try sending the code. And do we get the log statement? We want to get this little log statement. Yes, exactly, where the first item in the array, not the 0th, the first item. Okay. So basically, the match might not be here, but if we don't have the email domain, then we're returning false for sure. Because this is not a valid address, but probably this will be a valid email if we get to this step. Okay, let's see now what it looks like. Eric@foobar.com. Email domain is foobar.com. Now it's complaining that foobar is not a function. Find index. Yeah, this is not a function that can be used to find the index. Or wait a second. Find index. It's treating this like a function. Oh, I want to use index of in this case. Because find index is a function that allows you to find the index, but we don't need that because we're just looking for the exact match. I'm a little confused how the TypeScript is thinking that it's possible for email domain to be changing here. Because, like, what do you mean? Email domain should be here a string, or null, or a string. Okay, I don't know if that's going to make TypeScript happy. I don't really care. It's really their problem, not mine. Eric@foobar.com. And it should reject me clearly on the grounds of it being an invalid address. Thank you. That's what it's doing now. So now, if I do eric@zerve.app, it lets me log in. Great. So you need a zerve.app email address if you want to log in here. And I'm not going to test the email allow list, but I think it's going to work. And so the domain allow list is only ever used if the email allow list is missing. Great. So on the aardvark server, we already have, yes, the domain allow list zerve.app. So basically, you shouldn't be able to log in unless you are me, unless you have a zerve.app domain name. So once you're logged in, maybe you have some special ability to do something. Maybe you have some special action that will allow you to make progress on the next step of things, which is the deployment workflow. And I also have some code actually that allows me to create a server through DigitalOcean. But it's probably a little too early for me to get into that. I should make it so that the aardvark dev server is able to deploy the Zebra application on itself using itself. So that's what I'd like to have, right? I'd like to have a deploy Zebra. And this would be a create Z action. So this is like a server-side action that we're defining. And it takes in some argument. And it returns some argument. for now, I'm just going to say it just takes in and returns null. So then we define the async function, and here this function should return null. And then what we do, I don't know, console.log zebra deploy behavior. I don't know. This looks sensible. Maybe. No one should be able to deploy to Zebra except for me or other people on the Zerve project. So this is how we can enforce that, because this user won't be able to get to the Zebra deploy unless they are logged in with a zerve.app domain. So this is some highly secure thing. Zebra deploy behavior, you must be Eric. So let's see. Let's try and push this. And then maybe on my own laptop, we want to start experimenting with some more high-level behavior, or some more of the build behavior. Okay, let's see. Oh, we need to make sure to sync the changes to the server. And then we can run our nice slow deploy process from the server. So here we go. This is a pretty long script. So I will actually take this and put it into the package.json. Nobody other than me will be able to run this script because it depends on the key that's on my local computer. But I still like it. I still think it should be here. So now I just run yarn aardvark, and it goes and runs the whole deploy process. This is going to take another day. I'm going to go microwave my coffee again because it got cold again. I'll be back when this completes. We're playing Patient Simulator. And we won. Okay, who's allowed to log in to aardvark.zerve.dev? Oops. Fresh login. Eric at Zerve.app. Well, here I'll try a different one. Eric at foobar.co. Doesn't let Eric at foobar.co log in, but what about Eric at Zerve.app? Send me a code. So hopefully it'll let me actually log in. Okay, and here's the deploy zebra command. And basically only Zerve employees are allowed in this dashboard. So only this button can be pressed by Zerve employees. And now we can see on our server. Journal control-u aardvark server or something like that. Oh, it's because we're not actually logged into the server. We need to actually go onto our server. And now we can do -u aardvark server. And here's the zebra deploy behavior. Good, 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 good. Now we can move on to actually trying to deploy Zebra. So what are those steps? But part of the issue is that we don't actually want our front end to have to wait and have to perform all these steps. So we need something on the back end that's actually going to do these steps for us and then save the results of all those steps. And that's like what GitHub Actions does. Like when I run GitHub Actions, I don't like have to query for it and then save it, wait for the action to complete and then, save that file somewhere as a result of the action. No, the result of the action is saved on GitHub Actions, and we need the same behavior here. And if anything fails, we kind of want it to stop at that step in the process and show us the failure. So that means basically we need GitHub Actions. And this is, behavior that's really going to be useful for a lot of things beyond just deploying the server. But I think it's an important workflow. Let's just get on with this new feature of the Zed ecosystem that I've experimented a little bit with, but has a long way to go. It's really just getting started, called workflows. So I've created this thing, which is basically I've scaffolded out some code. I haven't actually implemented the workflows. We're gonna get into it. Let's see if I have some example code of this yet. Okay, on the puppy server, I have some example code. So the reason I'm messing around with the puppy server is that's where the most experimental things go. And usually when I'm drafting these new things, I'm also drafting the API that is used to use it. Like I'm creating sort of example code on the implementation and the consumption side of it at the same time. So this should work, but it's not actually going to do anything. So there's a new workflow step called create key pair. Sorry, there's a new action that I've created called create key pair. And where I just import that. And for example, we can put that on our server. Now does create key pair, it creates it in a temporary place and gives it to you as a variable. It creates the actual key pair that you might use to connect to a server or connect to GitHub. So we might as well get the create key pair working on, well, basically, like, we need to break down our build into several different steps. And we already have a lot of the tools necessary to do it because there's something called create system commands. So I'll go ahead and get that available inside of the Aardvark server. And we can experiment with it. System commands, I think is what it's called. And it's going to do create system commands. Const system commands equals create system commands. Pretty sure that's what it's called. Yeah, from system-commands. Good. And is this an async process? Nope. It just returns a container with one function inside of it called command. And this allows us to actually just run anything, any code on the server. Scary, but very powerful. Very scary, very powerful. With great responsibility comes great terror. Is that what they say? So let's see, I'm running the server locally on my laptop. So first let me see that. Oh, except I'm not logged in. So I need to like go through the login process on my computer. Which feels a little silly because I like log in every 5 minutes. I'm just waiting on that dear notification. Email domain. What is this 929 that got logged? What? Am I logging like the length of anything? Isn't that a weird mystery? So not only did the email not work, but we got this code, this error code. Or I don't know if it's an error code. But someone printed 929. So this is us just logging inside of the email allow list. That's just junk that we can clean up. So yeah, I didn't get the email this time. Let me just restart the server locally. I don't understand, though, how this 929 got logged. What a fun mystery. Usually a distraction like that would annoy the hell out of me. But right now I'm actually kind of entertained by it. Okay, enter the top secret email code. Is it gonna work? Send me an email. Oh, I solved the mystery. So part of the auth system's features is that it's trying to obscure who has an email address here and who doesn't. So if I come here and I type timcook@apple.com, maybe if it errors out really quickly, that's because Tim Cook doesn't have an account here. If it errors out slowly, maybe that's because it's emailing Tim Cook. So basically what it does is it will sometimes make up a certain amount of time inside of auth message strategy. Right. Does it log this value? Yeah. Okay, so what it's doing, it's logging some random math value, basically. This is what it was doing we're going to delete that log statement. And what it's saying basically is that it's already sent an email to this user. So we're basically going to waste some time to kind of fool the user into thinking that like, oh, maybe we're sending another email, but we're not actually sending the email. What that means is that there's an unused code in my inbox that I have. So I'm just going to use the most recent code I see, which was not actually just sent now. It was sent a while ago. Okay, now we have system commands, we have command, and now we can run anything. We can write, have you heard of the uptime command? It tells you how long your machine has been running. Arguments, oh no, don't tell me I can't do this from the web interface. Okay, I'm being told that I can't do this from the web interface. And fortunately, I'm logged in to this server on the mobile app as well. So I can go into system commands, type the command uptime, and we're basically going to, this is silly, I'm literally adding an item and removing an item in order to make sure that this list is properly an empty list. Network request failed. I think I have some spaces here. I don't know how those spaces got in there, but now I'm going to hit submit. Now there's no error. So that means that the command didn't fail on the server, and now it's telling me that I haven't restarted my laptop in 7 days and 6 or 9 minutes. Somehow it says 6 users, which is a little spooky because I'm the only one on here. What's going on? Do you have are there other users inside of this laptop like that I can't see? I don't understand. It's beyond me for sure. Okay, so because we can do anything here, like what's an example of things that we might do? We might run the git clone command. And here, when we run commands, I guess we don't have the ability to specify environment variables. So what if you need to specify what directory you're in, for example? I don't know if the git clone command that we want to run will work. But in any case, we want to make it so these commands are actually run from the server side. And the way this workflow thing works is not very ideal. The way it's being set up here is that create Z workflow is being given statically. It's being given like these are the actions that we want you to call. And then that workflow is just being put here alongside everything else. So it's calling an action that's here. The action is not logically inside of established workflow. The action is like kind of handled by the root. So this architecturally is known as nonsense. So I need to change this and fix this up. And I don't know the actual answer, but I have an idea of what could be the next thing to try, which is reassigning the root to be a workflow doohickey. Or in the case of the Aardvark server, we only want you to be able to run workflows if you're logged in. So we would be returning, inside of here, we would be returning a workflow object where all of the actions, such as system commands, are inside of it. So I'm going to start like ignoring puppy server and focusing on Aardvark server, and we're going to totally break and ignore puppy server. It's going to be so broken by the end of this because we're going to change the signature of create Z workflow. I'm going to open up the workflow file and close the puppy file. We're going to break the puppy. That sounds so fucked up. So workflow. Let's just call it workflows because we can use potentially the same container, the same workflow system to manage several different workflows. Is it called create Z workflow? Yeah. So here's the schema for what you do when you can start the workflow, but we're changing this super drastically. We're basically saying, here is a child container. I would say no. Here is a object of different API features, or kind of known as Z features. By the way, they have clearly started the sound outside, so I hope the banging isn't super annoying. Maybe the stochastic bangs coming from outside will blend well with the lo-fi, but the lo-fi is not going to be on the VOD. So sorry if it's distracting and sounds like crap. That happens. That's a risk that we take here. And at some point, I'm going to be driven insane and will go outside of my house to do some walking and go to the coffee shop and continue some stuff there. Okay, that is super loud and obnoxious. Even for you, I can tell. I can see the audio spiking on the stream. So I'll probably wrap this up before too long, but this is what I'm working on. I'm really excited about this new stuff because what we're going to do here is system commands is not going to be here. It's going to be inside of here. It's like create Z workflow environment. I don't know. What if it's create Z environment and inside of it we can create workflows? And the workflows are going to be able to refer to the environment. So perhaps at the first section, these are all the different things that we are given the ability to do. I'll also give system files here, which I think already exists in this server. No, it's called internal root files, which I'm going to rename to system files. Just for clarity and consistency with system commands. And yeah, so that means whoever's logged in can write to any file on the file system, or any file that's a child of this path. And this is the root path. So, there's also something called core data, which is not being used anymore. I'm kind of happy to keep complexity outside of Aardvark when it's not needed. We are going to, of course, be, that complexity will be inside of Zebra, and then we do need to go robustly test Zebra as a result of that. But that's totally doable. So for now, we need to make this Z environment thing exist and make it so that the second argument to create Z environment is the workflows. So Z environment is like the area of our API that has access to a bunch of different like sub commands, but then you can also run full workflows. So if you're allowed to access this environment, you're basically allowed to run the workflow, which means that you're also allowed to access all of this other stuff, such as system commands and system files and whatever else I wind up putting in here. I have a few things called like system SSH, and there's also one for DigitalOcean. But now we can run several different workflows inside of this single environment. So what is the definition for create Z workflow? Let's open the puppy back up. Puppy surgery. We're really making bad puppy jokes today. You can create the Z key pair. So what this is this is the action. This is the argument into the action, and these are a suite of options regarding the step. So I'll keep this signature for now because it's not the worst thing the worst thing that humanity has ever seen, and that's the same signature here. So this is the action that's being called, the data being passed into the action. We're saying that this step is being saved as the key after. So when we look at the result of the workflow, we're going to see every respective step being properly saved in that sort of resulting workflow. And here, more importantly, we also see after. So what we're specifying here is that this step in the workflow, calling this Z action, can only happen after we've done these two other steps, key 1 and key 2. So these steps actually are running in parallel by default. And in order to make one step happen after another, there's two ways of doing it. One is explicitly doing what we're doing here, is we're saying run the step after these other steps. The other way, and all of this is hypothetical, by the way, this isn't actually implemented, and this is kind of what I mean by we have a long way to go. But I want to make it so that these steps will know that they need to follow each other if the input to one step refers to another step. So here, maybe I could say, in this case, it doesn't make sense. It's like maybe instead of create key pair, it's like sign, z sign some shit, z sign. And then we say, as part of the input, it uses with, I don't know, like it would be a reference or something like this. This doesn't actually exist yet. This is hypothetical. Hypothetical time. I'm figuring this stuff out. But what we could do is we could say sign a certain value as signature. So here we don't have to specify. Here we don't have to specify the after part in here for key 1. It's implied because we're using a reference here inside of the payload of this step. We're saying that, hey, look, we need you to have key 1 completed, and that's what this step is. So steps is an array. You don't have to name everything that you do as a step, but you probably want to, or it's nicer to. The default is just the index. So the default key for this, if I didn't specify key after, it would be 0, 1, 2. It would be 2. So regardless of whether or not these use the default, this is the key would be 2 on this. And here you can see I've got some other example code. Not that it matters, because this doesn't actually work. None of the stuff that I just wrote works, especially Z reference. This does not work. Z sign is not a thing. Create key pair is a thing, but we need to make it so that Z workflow call step actually works. So let me just copy this, because the signature maybe doesn't need to change too much to be useful. Oh, and we're actually looking at the signature of this whole thing, create Z workflow. So here's the schema for what you pass into the workflow, because oftentimes the workflow will have arguments. So I'm just going to like copy this, because this is the core part of the signature for create Z workflow. Oh, and yeah, we need to like name our workflow. So what is this workflow called? This is going to be called the build workflow. Maybe we can even be more specific. It's about building a specific thing. But maybe we can have that as part of the payload. So we need a build schema. Maybe I'll call it the build payload schema, because I like making things hard on myself. For now, I'll put this in the same file, even though okay, maybe I shouldn't put this in the same file. Maybe I'll create a whole separate thing. Well, I already need to create a new file for the environment, so like, let me just get one step in front of the other. So the build payload schema, I'm just going to copy from this other file, because the object schema can be a little verbose. So here we're going to specify that you need a commit ID in order to perform the build. Well, I'm having fun, but I can still hear this stuff outside, and I know it's annoying me, and I'm sure it's also annoying anybody else who's going to watch this. So I need to make this create Z environment thing exist. But now this is making sense because the workflow call step, it won't be accessing this because that's not here. It's accessing the stuff here. It's accessing, for example, system commands / command. And that's the location of a actual command. Here we would specify the payload for that command. So what exactly does that payload look like? It looks like this. The command has a string and args is an array. Command, so let's just try calling it uptime. And args is empty array. So this is one, and we'll call this the uptime result. So this is one workflow, and I'll just call this the uptime workflow because we want to start simple. And actually there's no input to this workflow, so this would be a null schema. So we've created a simpler workflow, but we do need to make sure that create Z environment exists, and then we need to actually implement the system that's calling the steps. So there's so many steps before we're up and running. And I'll just call this workflow environment because that way I can put it in the same file as workflow and keep my sanity somewhat in check. Because it's really specific about the workflows. It's really like the environment is for the workflows. I don't know what else it's about. I don't want to be overly general just yet. So the two arguments to the environment are the Z record, which is literally a record. That's why I called it a Z record. A string to any Z. And I know you're so curious what any Z is. Can we just get any Z from Z core? Yep, looks like we can. So no need to explain what any Z is. I'm sure everyone has an understanding of that. That's not a complicated and messy concept at all. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I want to like crank up the music and start shouting over this banging noise that's going on outside. Okay, well, this has been a lot of fun. You can see where I'm going with this. I'm trying to, and yeah, like, hopefully when we check in again, a lot of the stuff will be fleshed out a little bit more. Just to finish my sentence here, I guess, there's a Z. Please let me finish my sentence, for fuck's sake, out there. There's the Z record, and then there's the workflows. So then it's a record of workflows. And these are all going to get merged in to the same section, probably. I don't know exactly, but it makes sense. I think that there are workflows presented alongside these things. Or maybe these things are known as the internals or the environment suite or something. But basically, this is going to expose an API that allows us to run these workflows. Workflows like uptime, where there's no input, but there's these steps. And then the user should be able to run these things and see the results saved. So you should also be able to see the history of runs. And more importantly than the uptime workflow is the workflow for building and deploying the workflows. There's two workflows for building and deploying a build on the server and kind of managing the list of builds on the server. So that's what I'm going to be working on. We've made great progress today. We made it so that we can export, with one command. The command right now looks like this. It's literally yarn workspace, aardvark. No, it's just yarn. What is it called? Literally just yarn aardvark. Boom. Now we're deploying this server to, it's premature because we haven't actually committed this code. This is just an example. Don't rush yourself. But we've got one command now that allows us to get code out to the world. Really exciting, even if it's not the final server that we wind up putting in users' hands. It's really nice to have that compared to yesterday when I wanted to get new code out there. It took like half an hour, and it was very stressful. So now this is fast, but we still want our server to be building and testing and deploying the actual end user application that we're going to be experimenting with. And with that, can you hear this loud, terribly loud noise out there? I'm going to wrap it up. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to do this again soon. I hope this noise doesn't continue for like all week and all day and all night. Feel free to hang out on Discord, and feel free to tweet me, and also check out the YouTube channel where, maybe now that I'm making good progress on some of this technical stuff, we can go back to YouTube and say, look at all this stuff that we've made, because the content production is not distracting me as much anymore. And